Okay, preparing. So welcome to the Node.js Node API team meeting for May 5th, 2023. We'll follow our standard approach of looking at the things that we've tagged for milestone 11. Before we do that, though, does anybody have any news or announcements they'd like to share? So welcome to the... No? Okay, let's move on then. I am going to share my screen here. I think this is the right one. Okay, so improve the score and openness of SCAR card. That's still waiting. I need to go back and look at the failures on the code QL, understand them. So it's on me. And wait a sec. I don't think this is not the things, the milestones. So there we go. Let's go. Okay, so that's the first one. We already talked about if there's anything new. In terms of documenting how to check for memory leaks, I know, Kevin, you submitted the PR. I'm sure I looked at it. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I think it landed.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. I might have.
Yeah, it merged.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that is done. Let us close that. You're landed. Done. Thanks for doing that.
Yep.
Okay, so the list of C language bindings. I assume Nick, Nick's still working on that. He's not here this week, so we'll just skip that one. Drive towards full coverage. So Jack, I don't know if there's anything you want to chat about on that one this week.
Yeah, so we have one more PR, and I think that's it. I think that's I want to see full coverage, but yeah, I think that's most of the test week.
Oh, that's great. That would be. Are you generating like coverage analysis through some tool or anything like that, or?
That's probably gonna be something I'm gonna be working on next.
Okay, that sounds like a perfect next thing. So okay, but thanks.
Thank you.
So yeah, you open a new PR and basically it's that one's ready. Right here.
Yep.
So basically that's the one to say, okay, let's review that, and then pretty much we should be covering everything.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna be trying to add the test coverage, the tooling to see if we actually have it. And yeah.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks a lot. Really good progress on that front. Okay, let me go back to issues. Here we go. Okay. So looking at stale issues. So these two were blocked on the feature bits runtime semantics. I just landed that like minutes before the meeting. So Vladimir, thanks for your persistence and work on that.
Thank you. It's a huge relief. Thank you. It's like ongoing stuff since last March. Like it's
I know it's like a long. Sometimes things just take a long time, but
like marathon for me.
So yeah, definitely thanks a lot, and it looks good and gives us sort of the framework for doing things in new versions of Node API, which is great. So I think then it's back to understanding these ones, and because I don't think we necessarily addressed them in that PR, but these were things that we maybe want to change the behavior, and we needed that there first, right? So it's maybe we just bring up the context. So what's the original?
Oh, it's about executing finalizers immediately.
Right.
This needed the feature bits.
Right, because it wasn't going to change behavior. And so we thought if that was changed, but in the new version, that would be better.
So should we cut version 9 before we fix this one?
I think we have things in experimental, right? So I think we can add things into experimental. But it's a good question. Like, do we want to make a version 9 to collect the things that won't be changed? Or just go straight to like, okay, we've got a new model. Let's make our new model and I mean, I think correct, jump in, but my first thought is why don't we make a few changes and then, put them all into 9.
Okay, just
Does anybody have any thoughts like, going the other way of saying we should batch up the things that don't change behavior first, or?
We've kind of picked version 8 as like the cutoff where we cannot make breaking changes, right? So I think I kind of agree with you, Mike, that it makes sense to just start adding changes, because by the way, now we have a feature to detect whether those changes can be applied or not.
Right, so we'll like the people will just stay at 8 unless they actually actively make a choice to opt into 9 and so
Yep.
forth. So yeah, we've got a couple like these 2, maybe at least we shouldn't wait forever, but like there was a couple that we were waiting on, so maybe getting a couple of those in would be good, and then we could cut 9. That sound good to everybody?
Right, there are a couple of experimental APIs. Would we move those over to stable in 9, or what would be the plan with those?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we would, yeah. Like I think we would take like I think all of the experimental ones, none of them are particularly new, right? As long as we think they've baked long enough, we would move all of those over and make them part of 9 as well.
Yeah, it looks like the last one was added node 16.14.
Right,
Or
it's been a
node
while.
16. Yeah, node 16.
Obviously,
shared
nothing has
a-
been sort of driving us to get those out super fast.
Yeah, I shared a link in the chat. It's a checklist of the version 9 a checklist of currently experimental APIs.
Right.
Looks good.
Well, I'm thinking that the version bit might going a bit longer to experiment to check if we can like say fix all the issues we have tagged that can be solved with the version semantics. So it might be take a little bit, like say month before we can release it as stable. So another option can be let's release all these existing APIs as 9, and we can work on the breaking changes in version 10, I guess, so that people can go straight away with the version with this existing APIs, since these APIs are not breaking changes anyway.
Yeah, it's like that's our choice. I think is like, do we want to like cut a 9 that just has these things, or do we want to wait a little bit and have more stuff in 9? So do you have a preference of like?
Actually, I don't have a strong preference, and we talked about this earlier that we can. I'm not sure. I don't remember last conclusion, but I see the runtime version was added to the list, so I'm not sure what's last. What's the conclusion of the last time we discussed this?
Yeah, we even said that things should have a little bit of baking time, I think, in experimental, right? Because we've just added that and it's experimental.
Yeah, it will be good for us to check that the issues we marked that can be fixed by the runtime semantics can be actually fixed,
right,
when we introduce the breaking changes, right? So it might be good to put the runtime version in experimental for a bit longer, so that we can verify all these issues can be fixed.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So it's like, do we think we want to try and get these ones out? Like get a 9 and then that would sort of mean that we don't have to. It could make sense to do that just so that we don't feel like we have to rush on the other ones.
I like
If-
the idea of getting those out in 9 and then doing the runtime stuff as experimental in 9.
And in that case, we have to update that preprocessor directive that Vladimir introduced, which is not supposed to ever change, right? Because currently it's set to 8, but if 9 does not include the runtime stuff, then it is really with 9 that we begin supporting what would normally be breaking changes. So
Yeah, exactly.
so we need to update that. We must not forget to update that constant when we release 9. Maybe that should be added to that ticket I made about making a release document, because I think whoever does the release should basically fix that ticket, because it would be not just like, okay, let's make a release. It'll be like, okay, let's make a release and document in detail how we made the release. And then the only exception to that, which will not be documented on purpose, would be to update that once we fixed it, it never changes again constant.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, have we decided that we're going to release like the non quote unquote controversial changes? So basically everything but the last point. If we have made that decision, then I will update that bug ticket, and maybe I'll mention it here that the releaser should basically fix that ticket and create the document as part of the release.
Yeah, I can take on this job so that to document the release process, the new release process, and update the constants, and to see if we can, like, say, create a checklist of big change for each versions, so that people can quickly get an overview of breaking changes of each versions.
But wait, this thing that does not have any break and change, like what I'm not sure what you guys talk. What do you call break and change?
The change that might change the API stable guarantee. It doesn't mean the breaking change we have the sense we have in the API sense. That's what I'm in mind.
It's where we might change the behavior in a way that we think could affect existing applications. So like we're not changing the API, but the change to the finalizers, is there any, do we believe that there's cases where, yeah, I know that'll affect existing code and they're going to have to change their code for it to be able to upgrade to version 9?
I just trying to understand this last PR, like 45715. What's kind of breaking behaviors there, like you guys call them?
I think what we mean is not that it's breaking, it's a breaking change. It's the ability to selectively support breaking changes with user buy-in. That ability we will start having in version 9 rather than version 10 rather than version 9.
Yeah, I might use the wrong word. It's not breaking, and especially when we introduce new abilities to existing APIs, it might not be breaking for existing add-ons, but they may didn't expect this API might working with the new, like, say, value types. But yeah, the word breaking change might not be appropriate.
So should we kind of roll back this last change? Like I'm just trying to understand, like why we would need to baseline to 9. Like why not to pretty much we have effectively this new one, like, and we will actually have this differentiation between 8 and 9, so people will be able to choose behavior between the two.
Yeah, we want to move that forward to, like, we want to basically increment by one. We want version 9 to be quote unquote like a classical release where all you have is new APIs and that's it, right? And then we want version 10 to be whatever new APIs arrive between now or between version 9 and version 10, plus the ability to change existing APIs based on your change of being able to tell at the runtime what version number the add-on requests. So basically everything you did is perfectly fine and not a breaking change. However, because it's so fresh, it has to stay experimental for a while longer. And we've already had things in experimental which have been sitting there for a long time. So we might as well make a release now. And so instead of your changes landing as part of version 9 of Node API, they will land as version 10, because that will give your changes time spent in experimental. But there's no controversy over landing it or not. It's absolutely uncontroversial.
Scheme itself will be part of 9, right?
I'm sorry?
The versioning, like this PR was just landed.
Yeah, we just landed the PR, but I think the APIs would have been under experimental, right? Maybe that's something.
Yeah, I think it should be under experimental until it's done baking. And what Gabe is saying, it would probably be done baking by the time
we roll 10.
Release version 10.
Yeah, and just because there was such a long gap between 8 and 9 doesn't mean that there has to be such a long gap between 9 and 10. So version 10 might just simply be this one change. Plus, well, yeah, I guess if we do the reference stuff, then it's going to have to bake a little longer, because when the reference stuff lands, then that's going to have to bake for a while. But basically, version 10 will be a very significant release, because it will add the ability to detect what behavior the add-on requests, and it will have 2 examples of behavior changed based on what was detected of the add-on, right? So the references and the change that came along with the ability to make such changes.
Yeah, although I'm not sure, like looking at it, I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to make this experimental, right? Like, it's not like the regular, when we add features, right? It's easy because they're just guarded by experimental and we move things. So, I think in this case, it's a different kind of change. So I'm not sure we can actually do it that easily. So we may be better off just saying, like, okay, let's just cut a 9 with this in it. And it's not like we've got new APIs, like, I'm not sure I'm gonna have to look, like, if we look in JS native API.
So we can definitely make this reference behavior to be a target, but v10. I just simply not agreed, like we change baseline from 8 to 9. It's because it will be effectively, we'll be able to test the whole this versioning schema almost immediately. It will effectively do nothing for now, but because we can postpone references changes to 10. And it's one simple change. If you go to JS native API v8 CC, there is a kind of in implementations, and we're creating a reference. It's sorry, like you scroll. Could you scroll up a bit?
Yep.
I think it's here. You see, you can just change module version here. Instead of 8, we'll say this line
9, yeah.
439. If we replace 8 with 9 here, so it will mean that this specific reference changes will go only to after 9.
Yeah.
So we can postpone these references changes.
Yeah.
I don't think like that controversial. Like then we edit, for example, symbol support, we didn't go through all these different hoops, right? Like it was just simply going there without any kind of even we didn't have any baking period for symbols.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like it wasn't never been experimental or something. It was just pushed. I'm not saying that we have to do it here, but
in fact, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think Vladimir, you're right. I'm not sure if we can even have a baking period for behavior changes, because they will land as soon as they land. Like, how do you mark a behavior change as experimental?
Well, it's because you can use a version in there.
We can replace the 8 constant with the MPI experimental, and when we release a new version, and we can replace all the MPI experimental in the CC file with the actual released version. So that can make sure we can release behavior change with the next version.
Yeah, we probably should have made that 8 the NAPI experimental.
Right. Yeah.
Effectively, it's the same thing today.
Test, if you check unit tests, it's exactly what we do today. Like if you scroll down a bit on the left-hand side and check with a zip file, it's what we do in zip file. We're simply saying that it's like with zip file. You see, this is what we do today. We're saying we have a previous behavior if it's NAPI version 8, or like a new behavior if it's experimental. So technically, it already works today.
Right. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, how do we create a baking period for behavior changes, right?
Well, they're because they're guarded by a NAPI version, and that NAPI version can be NAPI experimental, which is like the highest number, -1.
Yeah.
So they will only take place if you set your NAPI version as experimental.
And if your add-on reports the NAPI version as experimental when it loads.
Yes.
Right.
It's no difference as we do today with APIs. Like if you want to use experimental APIs, new experimental functions, you're saying your module uses experimental.
Yeah.
But also experimental will actually pick up any experimental behaviors.
Yeah, it will. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So it doesn't make sense for well-maintained modules. They should have a well-defined cutoff. Otherwise, they can drift. And essentially now with this ability to, I mean, if a module reports at runtime, version 2.1 billion, then that module will essentially lose ABI stability because it will pick up all the behavior changes which we may land in like various different versions of, even within like a patch version, even within a minor version.
Yeah, basically anything, if you say experimental, you pick up things which are whatever the current experimental stuff is in whatever.
But this is a change though. This is a change that is quite significant, because so far being experimental was pretty much safe, because it just meant that all the function definitions are available in the headers, right? They're not quote unquote commented out by this preprocessor directive.
But they could have been. You could compile and then we might delete them because they're experimental. We might change.
Yeah. But basically,
they might.
Agreed. But basically, but once the module is compiled, right? Then it will always load. I mean, okay, yes, unless we delete them, and then it'll fail to link.
You've compiled it. When it runs, it won't run, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It'll fail to link. Okay, but now we're introducing another failure mode, which is that all the symbols are still there, all their signature exactly the same, but in response to a certain combination of parameters, they return a different value, or their behavior is even more subtly different. Right.
That is true. That could already have happened in any of the methods that were experimental, because we didn't.
But it hasn't though.
Changed the implementation of those.
Yeah, but practically it hasn't really happened, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that with this change, we are rendering experimental modules less stable than they have been so far. But in fairness, they are marked as experimental. So I guess it's fair game. It's just one of the small implications.
Yeah.
So like yeah, like think like previously, if for example somebody has like version like like a 6, 7, 8, but if module was saying like I would like to be experimental, you don't really know like on which base version your experiment is, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The module is expected to pick up everything or fail. Yeah, what I'm trying to point out is that now there is one more failure mode which hasn't existed so far, because existing symbols which appear to be stable and unchanging really are, because now the behavior can change. So it's another failure mode for experimental modules.
I think, we're still not looking to make them massively different, right? Like, so it's not going to be like the method, like the ones we've got in mind, there still be relatively subtle changes that, well, yes, we believe they're ones that we wouldn't want to just put in without this mechanism.
Of course.
But even so, I think the risk is like they're not going to just break everything. They're going to make some small edge cases and stuff like that.
I'm just curious if there are any like widely used modules which are experimental. There shouldn't be, right? Because I mean, you want to have a good release strategy and you want to lock down the version and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, experimental in the name, but we'll find out. Like, I think that's where we'll make a few changes and we'll see how we'll learn as well in terms of the strategy. I think we've done our due diligence in terms of talking to the other runtimes and everything, but
okay. The rubber just has to hit the road and see what happens.
And again, this change in particular, it's more like we're enabling more versus
changing existing.
Okay.
All right,
so like
cool.
This one I'm like, I guess what we could do is we could set that 8 to experimental and include this as part of the 9 is probably what makes the most sense, right?
I think so.
Because that's probably what we should have done, based on our baking time stuff. But so let me just trying to find the issue, right? So along with but modifying this line to, so we're right. So we're looking at
where we're comparing.
Do you remember, Vladimir, which file was that in?
I think it was JS.
It was actually JS native API CC.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay.
This one.
Is it gonna let me get a?
So it will be this line. We need to change this zip file, and we also need to change documentation a bit.
Do we need to change the documentation? I'm wondering if we can still make 9 the point at which we've got the new approach. You've got to opt into 9. It just so happens that 9 doesn't have any of these more subtle things. Like, we're just not including this change because it hasn't baked. We could wait and include it. So 9 is still the cut point in terms of the new approach.
Right, but what I'm saying, like in documentation, I said in version 8 we only supported symbols and objects, but after version
okay. So that
this piece of documentation needs to be changed.
Okay.
References.
Okay. Right.
So just
to experimental. as well as the documentation that says at what point it will become, at what point.
Not the reference. So yeah.
Functionality. Yeah, I think for now it does, and I guess that means like as part of promoting it, we'll have to update the doc too, but that makes sense because it's part of.
Wait a second. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but if we change if env module less than equal 8 to env module API version less than equal an API experimental, then you know, an API experimental is a large number, so this will basically apply to everybody, right? Because you know, module version 6 is less than experimental. So
Right, it'll have to be, but it'll be more like it has to go the other way. Like the if needs, this is less than or equal to 8, but it needs to be like greater than or equal to something, or greater than 8 maybe. It's got to be greater than or equal to an actual experimental. Like we may have to flip the if, right?
well, but we want to go into the body of the if statement only if it's less than or equal to 8, because the point of this change is that we skip over that check, right? It is the removal of that check is the quote unquote breaking change. So I think this is actually correct, because if it's anything larger than 8, then you don't perform the check.
But
Well,
we want to do it only in 10, so technically this check should be less than equal to 9. So if we release 9 without this new functionality.
yeah. Well, but okay, but I set it to No, but it's like it really comes down to we need the check to be against experimental, right? Because if you put it at 9, that means that like, right? Like
Well,
it might have to flip
okay.
around, but like
Yeah.
We basically need to do some check against experimental and say if it's experimental, the new change takes place, right?
Yeah. If it's experimental, then skip this check, basically, for this particular change.
So yeah, the check should be say like it's not experimental, it's not equal experimental, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's not equal to experimental, anyway, I'm sure we can get it right in the actual PR.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
And also we need to update this unit tests, related unit tests.
Right. Okay. As well.
Okay. Yeah. So then that has to go into the document as well, because we're going to have a lot of these things that are not equal to experimental, and things that are not equal to experimental are going to have to be changed to less than or equal to whatever version when we do release a new version.
Yeah, we would want to find all of those.
Yes.
And then replace them to basically release it as the.
Yeah. So basically, currently what we do is in the header files, we remove things from an experimental section and we move them to a new whatever version number section. And so the additional step, now that we have this mechanism, is to also go through the implementation and replace all the checks that say not equal to experimental with checks that say less than or equal to version number being in the process of being released.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so I have to add that to the ticket.
Okay.
So if you like, I can create a follow-up to this PR just to kind of use an experimental. It's up to you, or somebody who is gonna work on.
I think it would be good if you submitted a PR to switch it to experimental.
Okay.
And then Shenzong, I think you volunteered to do the actual release itself.
Yeah, I can do it, and I can check if we need to update the release document if we have one.
Right. Okay. Because we'll basically need to, like, there'll be a PR to do the release too, but I think a separate one that basically says, oh, you know, we should have guarded this was experimental. Let's just switch this particular thing to experimental is good. And then separately, we can do like, here's the actual release thing.
Michael, can you please link the issue 47664 to the do the release point that you wrote in the comment, because that's the one calling for creation of this release checklist. And so if Changzhong is going to go through the release process, then he can document it at the same time. That's the easiest way. Okay, and I'm just going to add to the ticket to make sure that we change these guards.
So is that in where? In
Yeah, it's in Node. Yeah, issues 47664.
47766.
664. No, 2 6s instead of 2 7s. 47664.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, this one.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Well, that was a good discussion. It's always fun the first time we work through something like this, but that's good. Anything else on this one we should discuss?
So can we speak about finalizers behavior? Like it's what we've been derailed.
Right. Okay. So back then to the finalizers one, which is, I think, right, this one, which was basically, if you're in a tight loop, they don't get freed, right?
Right, and root of the issue, just to remind that currently we running always finalizers as a part of this set immediate. So technically, we running all finalizers as a kind of a separate task in our looper, task loop. I'll call it task loop or UV loop. Right?
Yeah, we can.
Right.
We can, let's say, add a new guard with the MPI experimental, and if the runtime version is defined with MPI experimental, and we can invoke the finalizer immediately when V8 invokes the weak callback. Yeah, and that we'll need to change this in the core.
Yeah.
Right, but the reason we didn't run them immediately because we don't want to have any JavaScript exceptions. So it means running finalizer immediately means that finalizer is not able to run JavaScript code anymore. And I do have submitted long time before, right, about it.
Especially, we'll need to ensure that the finalizer cannot access the heap. So we'll need to introduce a new MPI status code. Like say, you cannot access the heap when you are in the finalizer. Or like say, when you cannot create an object or you cannot create any functions in the finalizer.
Is this different from being unable to run JavaScript at all?
Yeah, exactly. The only thing you can do is delete the MPI ref, which is similar to V8's weak callback semantics. The only thing you can do is reset the persistent handle.
Yeah, but I think you can access unmanaged heap. Like you're only not allowed to access any managed heap from V8 point of view.
Yeah, you can access your own data, but you cannot access the JavaScript heap.
So the question, like, is it okay just simply prohibit any JavaScript related code? Because I think like last time that I was working with PR, I found that we already marking all our Node API functions which accessing JavaScript. So it's pretty much the same flag which allows today, which says like accessing JavaScript is prohibited. We can reuse it.
Right. I think we were like this related to the feature bit side of things. It's like this we still thought we would want to make opt-in, right?
Yeah, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we add a new status that says unable to execute JavaScript, right? Or currently unable to execute JavaScript or whatever, right? Or JavaScript unavailable, I don't know. And then we create a runtime check now that we have the mechanism that says if JavaScript execution is unavailable and the version number is experimental, or some later version of Node API, then return this new status instead of returning an API pending exception, right?
Right.
And
but-
then we can make the change.
What I wasn't sure is that we'd, like in this one, I could see where having like something where you could opt in makes sense, but I'm not sure we want to like basically say no. Like existing finalizers could try and run JavaScript code, and we're basically saying, no, you can never do that again, right? Like, I'm not sure we'd come to that conclusion. I think we'd agree that it would be nice to let people opt into it.
Yeah, the first is that they have to opt in with this feature with the NPI version, runtime versions. And the second, I was thinking that we can add a help function similar to the set immediate, which we have now, and for add-ons to migrate their existing penalizers to, like, say, if you cannot update your current APIs easily, you can upgrade to the newer Node API versions and move your JavaScript executions with the to a later point with the new API set immediate.
Right, okay,
Right.
so change the default behavior, but giving them a way to do the old behavior if they need to.
Yeah, but this needs a new Node API.
Right. Yeah, I think that's also something that kind of makes sense to me. If we really think that most people don't need to run it, and so, you know, if you want to move up, you're going to have to write a little bit of code change. Then yeah, but I think there needs to, yeah, like you said, there's got to be a way where they can opt back into having their finalizers run with JavaScript code at least.
Yeah, in the case that you, like, say, when add-ons existing APIs or existing behaviors is hard to change,
Right.
and they are eagerly to use the new APIs or whatever,
Right.
they can choose to use the new set immediate function and delay their JavaScript execution. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a reasonable trade-off.
But I mean, this doesn't need to be part of the finalizer change PR. Yeah, this PR, I think it's good to change the finalizer to make the finalizer more efficient, and we can add the set immediate function at a later point with the follow-up PR. Yeah, I didn't mean we need to do all this in this PR.
Yeah, except that, like, if it's going to take away the functionality, or I guess you're saying like we could do it, but then have the other one to add back, but we'd have to make sure we didn't move those.
I mean, the set immediate function can be, it's good to use it with its own. I mean, even without the finalizer change, the set immediate has its own usage, right? So we don't need to add the new function in this split finalizer PR, right? If Vladimir is still working on it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm a little bit behind here. Why did we not decide to simply create new API that allows for pure finalizers, that
We
seems
have
like
several,
a lot less impact. And then people that need eager finalization can just use this new API instead.
we have several existing Node APIs that use references that use the API finalizer type. So if we create a new finalizer type, we have to create a new variant for all of these Node API functions.
Okay, and why is that bad? So you know what I mean? Like people that don't call JavaScript from their finalizers, they're fine as they are. Those that do, right? Those that don't call JavaScript from their finalizers can just move to this new API. All they have to do is replace an API with Node API, right? Those that do call JavaScript from their finalizers will be unaffected, right? They don't need to make any code changes. Is that not less impact than changing the default behavior?
Yeah, that's a good point, but I was commented in the PR that when add-ons can create two types of analyzer.
Wait a minute. Vladimir's point comes back to me. The finalizer will not have a different signature because you still need to pass the env in there for the instance data. So it won't be. It'll just be documented that if you create the reference or the finalizer with this API rather than the original API, then this would be an eager finalizer. And so you can still call NAPI functions, but they will return an API pending exception, or if we introduce this new status, then NAPI cannot return JavaScript. So they behave exactly the same in terms of in terms of how you attach them, et cetera, et cetera. The function name is different. And the behavior is documented to be different, but otherwise we don't need a new signature. We can just copy the functions over and just have a flag that says don't immediate these guys.
Another, like, related to the concept of feature bits at 1.2 is we could, instead of duplicating all the methods, if we think like people are going to need one or the other, you know, a function that says, you know, eager finalizers that you could enable could also be another option, right? Like basically you opt into, I don't want, you know, we could actually, and that's one where maybe the you know, if there's a new method that says opt into, you can't run JavaScript to my finalizers, that could be an initial case. But then like in a later version, based on the you know, the new approach we have, we could actually make that the default and you'd have to call the opt out of it.
One thing I don't understand is why is it bad to mix and match types of finalizers? Like some finalizers may need to call into JavaScript, like, you know, notify that something is gone. And so, you know, I don't know if there's an example out there of an add-on where some finalizers call into JavaScript, others do not. Why are they mutually exclusive? Your add-on is either compiled with eager finalizers or it's compiled with JavaScript allowing finalizers. Why is that the only
that's
place?
kind of what I was saying, is we could just have a method that lets you change whether it's one or the other.
Oh, for an existing one.
So basically we add a new method that says for all finalizers, it's going to be this way or that way, right? And then there's the default, which initially could be the same as it is today.
Okay, but still, like, okay, so I can see that being implemented on the environment, like this module has chosen eager finalizers, and there's a flag on the environment that says that for this module, you know, finalize eagerly. But what I'm suggesting is that it may be better to have this per reference. rather than per
Right.
add-on.
Because maybe an add-on has multiple types of references in there,
Yes.
and one reference
Yes.
needs a
Yeah.
JavaScript callback and one reference does not.
Yeah.
I think
So-
I mean, unfortunately, the context is quite old now in terms of the discussion.
Yeah, the point I commented, yeah, it's exact the comment. Yeah, that my point is that when we have one single finalizer type, people don't have to distinguish them, and they do know that the finalizer are the exact time point when the finalizer are being executed. They can schedule their JavaScript execution when they does need it.
I think it's like it gets more complicated. Like
I think
supporting
okay,
lots of
I see.
options is complicated, and
Yeah. Okay, I see. Changzhong, correct me if I'm wrong. What you're saying is that we make all finalizers eager, and then we provide an API for executing the JavaScript requiring portion of the finalizer with we defer execution of that part of the finalizer. So the finalizer gets called, and inside the finalizer, a call is made to this new API, which says, okay, do the JavaScript bits in an immediate. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
I
that
see.
helper function he was
Right.
talking about.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's fair.
Exactly. So
yeah, and
by default, if people if the add-on doesn't need the JavaScript execution in the finalizer, their add-on can be more efficient performance-wise.
Right.
When they upgrade to the newer API version, and they don't have to distinguish the finalizer types, since we two types of finalizer increase the choice they have to choose which one is correct for them.
Okay, yes, and then we use the feature bits to make all finalizers eager.
yeah, or because we have an option, right? Like, I think if we change the default to be eager, and we add this extra method so that there's a clear way to do the deferred what JavaScript finalization you do need from the new way, we've now got the mechanism to say, well, when you opt up to go from 9 to 10, you're going to have to do a little bit of code changes. You know, you can stay on 9, great. We'll continue to work, no problem. However, if you want to move up to 10, you're probably taking care of, we've already said you're already making code changes to take advantage of it. You're going to have to make a few more code changes to do this, but there's a path to doing that.
Okay, yeah, that works.
So I think the change probably needs to be like, if we're going to disallow JavaScript in finalizers, we probably need the piece in the same PR, the bit that says, oh, and here's how you can do the finalize the JavaScript, run the JavaScript deferred from that finalizer.
Yeah, like we do have this set immediate method internally inside of node.js. I think exposing this method through Node API should not be that difficult. So
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think
There's
as we work in this Node API for .NET, I found I have to do all these different dances around this thread safe function just to get the set immediate functionality working. I think it will be
there's another angle here. Is this JS native API or is this Node API? Because the inability to execute JavaScript code from a finalizer may not be a V8 specific thing. This may be true for all JavaScript engines. I mean, we know it's not physically true, but some future JavaScript engine might have this problem as well, right? So I'm thinking my instinct tells me that this should go into JS native API, this functionality, because it's sort of it's not V8 specific in the sense that how references are collected and whether JavaScript can be executed while a reference is collected is a generic problem for all JavaScript engines, because it depends on the implementation of garbage collection, right? In the case of V8, their garbage collection implementation renders the engine itself unusable during eager finalization, right? But this is something that is not necessarily specific to V8, right? And so I think if and when we do this, this should go into JS native API rather than Node API. Let's not make this node specific. If for other engines, the implementation of set immediate may be trivial. It may not even be set immediate. It'll just be like, just run it now. I don't care. I don't have this concept, right? But it should be available.
It's really if the corresponding reference functions in JS native API, then definitely it should be.
Yes. References are part of JS native API.
Right. So then it just should be in there, right? Because
I think so. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we remember that it should be in JS native API rather than Node API, so it doesn't land in the wrong place.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
so we are at
agree.
time. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree that it should be part of JS native API because penalizers is part of JS native API, and if we getting out some functionality out of there, like we need to, and we want to compensate for this functionality, it should be part of the same set of functions.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at time. But yeah, I think next time we should maybe look at the next one as well in terms of like what are the next steps on that one. Any other things that we should chat about before we close out for this week?
I got nothing.
Yeah, all good.
Well, thanks for everybody's time, and yeah, it might be a few weeks before I see you in person, but see everybody in GitHub between now and then. Thanks.
Yeah, see ya.
Bye.
Sounds good.